But that Air Canada pilots strike on the horizon. Yes. So steer clear of Air Canada if you have travel that is time sensitive and you don't want it to get canceled at the last minute, which that's all travel, right? There's nothing worse than being ready to go to the airport, getting in the red car and finding out your flight is canceled, or, not even getting to the red car part and finding out your flight is canceled, or getting to the airport and finding out your flight is canceled, even worse. CBDC in Australia, apparently they're going to force their population to adopt this, just like Nigeria, right? And Nigeria is fighting back against that as well. So get money into, I think that if they force it, a lot of people will start using alternatives like Bitcoin, or, in Greece, there was a situation where Greece is on the euro, but Macedonia, which is very close to Greece, is not on the euro. And so things in Macedonia cost less. And so there was this whole culture and sub economy that was functioning close to the Macedonian border that was barter, and I'd even seen metal being weighed, so you could trade in silver and gold and all sorts of different workarounds. Now this is during a crisis time for Greece. I don't think that that's happening now, but I could be wrong about that. We're going back to like 2014, 2012, bankruptcy time. Germany was bailing them out. There was all sorts of stuff going on there, but fundamentally, if there's a crisis of the currency and people can't buy what they need with the money, then they'll find money that people will accept. And if that's Bitcoin, fine. If that's metal, fine. If that's like gold or silver, fine. If that's trade and barter, people figure it out, right? So I feel like all that happens if they screw with the money, they lose control. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong, because look at what happened with COVID, right? On one side of things, I say people won't accept it. And the other side of things, everybody's wearing a mask, right? I'm still seeing people wearing a mask. So it's crazy town. Kitchen Table Talk today. Don't forget, if you're interested, I'm going to be sending an email after this broadcast. If you want to join in, go to canadapoly.com. On the sidebar, you can join in, join the mailing list, and I'll send you an email, and then there'll be a link and you can join in and have a chat, and we'll chat about all the crazy things that are going on. Mark Carney is getting in on the cronyism scam, and that's where we're going to start today. So it has to do with Starlink. It has to do with cronyism. It has to do with billions of dollars being given to a friend of Mark Carney. And so Andy Lee, of course, is highlighting this. She says, looks like our new Trudeau appointed economic advisor, Mark Carney, caught up with his Telsat CEO friend recently, just a few months before his company was given $2 billion from taxpayers. In fact, small world, right? Ottawa Citizen caught Mark Carney. It's like page 6, Ottawa Citizen caught Mark Carney with the CEO. Carney had a laugh with good friend Dan Goldberg, president and CEO of Telsat. We're all noticing, right? There's a noticing thing happening here. Andy Lee says Telsat's been milking taxpayers for billions for years with literal progress. This was from 2021. Their network was supposed to be ready in 2024. What's the date? Oh my gosh, it's September? The other side of September 2024? Gosh, I won't hold my breath. They just got $2 million. That's pretty wild stuff, right? Like, it's incredible. So this is the article that Andy Lee was highlighting. Telsat closer to financing satellite network after Canada investment. Telsat took a major step towards financing its low Earth orbit (LEO) satellite constellation that aims to provide high-speed broadband after Canada on Thursday said it would invest 1.44 billion Canadian, 1.2 billion US in the project. So all this money, and now 2.1 more billions of dollars to Telsat to compete with Elon Musk. And are we going to actually get a product delivered, or is it not going to happen? And how much is the monthly cost? Because it seems like these guys have taken billions of dollars in R&D and other monies from the Canadian government and not been able to deliver a product. And Elon Musk had some chewing gum and some other items and was able to fashion this whole thing together and deploy it. So like, he also has a space company, so fine, fair enough. But shouldn't Canada also have something to compete with, I don't know, Elon Musk? No? When Canada can't compete with a private citizen, that's a problem. All of our best politicians can't compete with one billionaire who's African-American, Canadian. GM Forbes says Trudeau announces Mark Carney as an economic advisor. Carney is good friends with Telsat head. Trudeau then announces $2.14 billion for Montreal's Telsat to build remote area broadband network. Elon Musk said today that he could do it for less than half with Starlink. So, hey, you want the actual thing, or do you want to just launder money through all these companies? Which one? Because you can't do both. Elon Musk is asked by Michael Barrett. Michael Barrett says, hey, Elon, how much would it cost to provide Starlink to every Canadian household that doesn't have high-speed internet? If this $2.14 billion plan is the panacea of expanding access, competition, and service, where's the interest from private investors and banks? And Elon Musk says less than half that amount. I think, yeah, he's got the infrastructure. He's deploying Starlink for a whole bunch of countries. Ukraine is one, Brazil is one, just off the top of my head, right? And so like and currently Canada is one too. The infrastructure exists above Canada to do what they're talking about. No need to spend billions on reinventing the wheel. All you have to do is call up Elon Musk and say, can we buy a bunch of those? Like, do you give volume discounts? Because also we're the government. So we'd like to partner with you or something like that. So it's interesting that he says less than half. Somebody else was saying he could do it for 1.5 billion. And I was like, man, already padding the books, right? But less than half of 2.14 billion. So presumably less than 1.7 billion. So that's already good savings. And like, I'm on board with getting everybody in Canada online in a reasonable and reliable way, not for social credit scores or digital ID or CBDCs or anything like that. No, because the internet's great. I like the internet. But I don't like tracking or anything like that. But I'm in favor generally of getting people online who have previously not been online. So I think the technology is great. Deploy it. Partner with people, that's a good idea. All of that's wonderful. But this cronyism, where Mark Carney's buddies with this guy, and we're giving all of these billions of dollars to develop this Starlink thing, when we could just actually directly partner with somebody who's already built it, already deployed it, and we can deal with the end user in the short term. Like, we can solve this problem in months, not a couple of years with maybe a couple more billions of dollars to my friends, right? Like, jeepers creepers. It seems obvious that we're being stolen from, but when you say that, people are like, oh, well, okay. Here's another example of theft of our tax dollars going to companies who know people, and they can't provide what they promised to provide. Whereas if we had procurement that was, I don't know, that had oversight with teeth and full transparency and bounties, right? Like, if you find an error, you get to keep a certain amount, like, it would be worthwhile, like $50,000, $100,000, like a good bounty. We're talking a good bounty, right? And like, the people who screwed us over would be on the hook for that money. Okay. John is saying the Canadian Army says new military sleeping bags not suitable for your typical Canadian winter. We know that. We talked about it yesterday. There are no words to describe the level of incompetence related to this procurement. It's not incompetence. It's cronyism. It's insider. I want to make money. And then somebody in the government says, I know how you can make money. We're friends. You have a company that sells sleeping bags, right? And the guy says, no. And then the Liberal government taps him on the foot and says, yes, you do. You have that company that sells sleeping bags, remember? And you go, oh, right, I do. And then you spin up a company and you source sleeping bags, but you source the wrong ones and you charge them millions of dollars, $34 million for sleeping bags, and they don't work. But nobody looks twice because you're friends with the Prime Minister, right? Jerry says, what Liberal insider got this plum contract? And John says, it looks like Logistic Unicorp. Globalist Uniparty got that one, got the contract. CEO Louis Bibeau, picture relevant. So if you know a guy who knows a guy, and maybe you know where to get some subpar sleeping bags, I've got a bridge to sell you, right? Like, that's how things work in Canada, unfortunately, and I wish it weren't so. But our tax dollars get spent on a lot of waste, like a lot of waste. I would say that probably the waste that goes out of our government would rival the U.S. government waste, because we get very little value for money. So we have to spend a lot more of it to get like the same level of corruption. Andrew says, okay, Michael is talking about this. We're going to move on. We're going to talk about the invasion now. So one part of running the government is that you get to use taxpayer dollars to bring money into reality now, pay for projects that your friends are going to run, and then not be held accountable for that. And the other part of running government is you can open up the floodgates of immigration and completely change the demographics of a country. And that's not seen as an attack for some strange reason. I have no idea why, but it's not. So what's going on is, well, Andrew's highlighting this, and Michael is too. He says, just in case you were wondering why German cities look and feel differently today than they did 10 years ago, Germans are moving out and immigrants are moving in. Going out in Dusseldorf or Frankfurt is not what it used to be. And so you can see the demographics graph in 2012, the immigration from other countries is gray, and I'm not exactly sure what's showing the exodus. Hold on. So the orange represents the new arrivals, foreigners, and the blue is Germans leaving the bigger cities and migrating within Germany. So you can see in 2012 there's only, a little bit of orange, I guess, or yellow. And then as time moves on, and there's very little blue, 2014, blue is detected for the first time. So Germans leaving major cities for other places in Germany. And the migrants have increased and increased, but Germans leaving has also increased. So that's happening in Germany, and people have noticed. And Andrew says, I live in Dusseldorf and can confirm this 100% on an average Saturday night in the summer. No festivals or big movies or anything like this. The Rhine Promenade is about 90% people with a migration background, which is very different than as recently as 2014. The demographics on the ground are changing in real time to the degree where your average, regular, normal person is saying, when you go out in Dusseldorf, it doesn't look like Dusseldorf anymore, right? Same thing in Mississauga, same thing in Brampton, same thing in Toronto, same thing in Guelph, same thing in Fergus, Elora, right? Why is that happening? Same thing in Ellesmere Port in England, same thing in London, England, right? And Ontario too. Same thing. See, it's not quite, same thing in Springfield, Ohio. When I was in the States this year, it wasn't happening in Kentucky. I went into a Walmart and I was like, holy smokeronis, this looks like 2010 in Canada, right? Pretty wild stuff. So going down all through the South, Kentucky, Georgia, South Carolina, all of these, it was like going back in time. But Ohio, targeted, has a flood of migrants, and they're trying to change the demographics on the ground, and they're having great success, wonderful success, and it's unbelievable. And people are, again, noticing, and I'll show you that they're noticing. David Vance says, this is how demographic replacement works. Haitian immigrants are sent to where they do the greatest demographic damage. So Data Hazard says, did you think Kamala was flying migrants to Martha's Vineyard? 81% of her irregular illegal Haitians somehow went to states that voted against her in 2020. If you look closely at the graph, you can just barely see where they started flying them in to your neighborhood. So Q3 2022 is when things really ramped up. And then since then, it's gone even more, right? And so they're flying them into states that voted for Trump way more than states that voted for Kamala, right? So there you go. Pretty wild stuff. They're using this as a weapon. I don't think that's disputable. But what is something that we can discuss is how to respond. If we were being bombed, say you went downtown to your downtown core or your shops and things like that, and there was disaster everywhere, like shops were blown up, people were missing body parts. It was an absolute disaster. It looked like Gaza, right? Like it was an absolute disaster. People would say, we're being attacked, right? But you see these charts and you're like, wow, that's weird. They're eating pets, right? Like, you get distracted. You don't think that you're being attacked. You think maybe we've done something to deserve this. We're not being open enough, inviting enough. We're not being tolerant enough. That's really the problem. We are the problem. We are the reason that this is happening to us. I don't think so. This is a guy, and he's saying that in the 70s, maybe earlier than that, he had to do an impact assessment for the U.S. military in order to send 800 troops into a town like Springfield, Ohio. He gets very detailed. He says this didn't happen for what's happening now. No, at that point, the U.S. military kind of still worked for the U.S. population, the U.S. public, probably. Although at that point in time, they'd already usurped the executive branch, right? When JFK was killed, even before JFK, like Truman, it looks like Truman was somebody who was placed. FDR, somebody maybe who was placed. So going back to even the 30s, I think there's probably monkey business at the top upper echelon of the U.S. leadership. By Truman, it had been turned, but not 100%, because you got Kennedy in there later. But they had control of major parties at that point in time, but there was a battle going on. Since the 70s, 75, 80, the battle has been the U.S. government convincing the U.S. population that they need speech controls, and that's where we're at now, right? So like that's basically what it is. We have wars, we have this, we have that. We need to crack down on your speech. Also, development of the technology for tracking, like we've got now. So the internet, phones, all of that stuff was in the hopper, just waiting to be unleashed, I think. But again, could be wrong. But in the 70s, a lot of the U.S. military believed that they worked for the U.S. public. Okay, so here's this guy talking about the impact assessment they had to do when they were trying to go into a town. Here we go.
At the infrastructure of a city and an impact that some activity might have on a city. I myself conducted an environmental impact assessment for Del City, for the city, but in behalf of the city of Del City, Oklahoma, when the Air Force was supposed to have 800 people come into the city, a city of 30,000, 800 now. Very detailed assessment. It looked at what impact those 800 people would have on the school system. It looked at what impact it would have on the hospital. We got so detailed that we figured out how often a toilet would be flushed every day additionally, and putting an impact on the sewage treatment plant. You sit back and say, wow, was this done? Now that we're faced with this horrible demand on our resources here. And you say, I don't think so. It's not incumbent upon you. No, it's not the city's responsibility to do that. It's this strange entity out there that caused all the problems we have who didn't do it. And I'm speculating because I'm very confused about how this all came about. I'm assuming that it's an NGO, a non-government organization that seems to be immune from any type of looking.
So sorry, that was probably very quiet. I turned it up as much as I could because there's a terminal. I think I can't turn it up past a certain dB. So I turned it up as much as I could. It was at 19, which is very high. And I'm going to turn it down now because I'll blow out your speakers if I forget. So apologies that it was quiet. But he's saying, I don't think this was done. And it seems like there's an entity out there that's protected from any kind of oversight. And that seems weird. And I'm confused how this was done because we had an understanding previously that you don't do this to people. And now we're doing this to people. And that's strange. Here's a woman who's talking about exactly the same thing. And she's saying, what the heck? How could this be possible? The tweet that accompanies it says, it's not about the cats or the dogs. It's about the 60,000 Americans being asked to absorb 20,000 illegal migrants overnight. As usual, the left doesn't care about the crisis, just the optics. Here is this woman.
Here's the thing everyone seems to be forgetting about this Haitians eating cats and dogs thing. It's not about the dogs. It's not about the cats. It's not about the pets or the ducks or whether or not Trump said it right or wrong, or what reports are rumors and what are true. It is about the fact that the United States government dumped 20,000 illegal Haitian migrants into a town of 60,000 poor people and expected them to deal with it. So now it's a crisis. So now some weird stuff is happening. Is it cats? Is it dogs? Or is it just ducks in the public park? If you're a liberal and that's your argument, I think you frigging lost the plot. If your argument is, well, it's not really pets, and that's where you stop, what's wrong with you? Why don't you believe these people? Why don't you want to help these people? Where is your compassion for these people? They're telling you we're in trouble here. The way we're dealing with this immigrant crisis is hurting everybody. Help us. And all you progressive liberals can say is, well, they're not eating pets. Get a grip. Get it together.
I'll leave it there. So yeah, she's got a point, right? She's got a point, I think. And it's very, very interesting how, again, I talk often about how there's wizard circles and things to keep us distracted. If we were going to solve the main problem, we'd solve the main problem. But if we were going to talk about something else, we'll talk about something else. So we're talking about cats and dogs rather than the migrant problem. It sounds like it's associated, sounds really closely associated. Solving the cats and dogs problem is going to normalize the migrant problem. It's going to normalize. Well, we've just got to teach these people our culture and our ways. We've got to stop them from eating cats and dogs and show them that you just go to, the buffet or whatever it is. That's not the solution, right? The problem is not the cats and dogs. That's also downstream from the problem. It is a problem, certainly, but it's not the main one, right? The main one is the 20,000 Haitian migrants who are doing voodoo on the 60,000 residents, poor residents, who are saddled with this thanks to the US government. And this is just one microcosm, just one, very small one, right? So it's crazy stuff. And they want to do this in Canada. They are doing this in Canada. Justin Trudeau is saying, listen, if you don't do this, we're going to just rent hotels. We can rent hotels and put whoever we want in whatever community we want. This is our Canada, right? And the provinces are saying, no, we don't want that. Liberal Party says, Pierre Poilievre and his Conservatives don't have a plan to solve the housing crisis. But our Liberal housing plan is unlocking nearly 4 million new homes while supporting first-time homebuyers and renters. Add your name to support a real plan. So the Liberals caused this housing crisis. The Liberals caused this with their bad immigration policies. I don't think there's any disputing that, although maybe people will dispute me. That's fine. They caused this with their policies. Full stop. Period. And now they're saying Pierre Poilievre doesn't have a plan to deal with this crisis that we caused. We do, but their plan is their problem reaction solution plan. I'm still not convinced that Pierre Poilievre is going to save Canada from the NWO, from the New World Order, from the One World Government, from Paris Accords, and all of the other globalist initiatives that we're all part of, the 2030 Agenda and so on. I'm not convinced. I hope that I'm wrong and that he does stop all of this, because we need to stop all of this. But the power structures of the world are such that if you don't sign on, you don't become the leader of the country, because the people who are in charge get to select the leadership. Our leadership in Canada is compromised at the party level. So there's not a lot of oversight at the party level. Deloitte oversees the Conservatives, and I think maybe even the Liberals. They do it through Dominion. We've had problems with the last, 5 or 6 leadership races. And not that nobody cares, but the people who care are like the 9/11 truthers, right? They're the people who didn't want to go to war in Iraq, right? They're the people who don't want to go to war in Ukraine, Russia, right? We're saying, listen, this is a bad idea. We shouldn't do this. It's based on false pretenses. We should stop. And nobody's listening to them. Unfortunately. I hope I'm wrong, right? Maybe we're being listened to more than I think, right? But I don't think so. I'm not seeing any indication of that. So the Liberals caused this housing crisis. They say we're going to build houses. They say we have built 4,000 houses. This guy says, no, you haven't. You've done a terrible job. And your plan is to build 1 house per minute. And you're not close to that. We're not and we can see that, right? Like, they've made this promise months and months ago. I haven't seen an increase. I live around construction sites. There's not been an increase at all. In fact, there's places that are sitting empty because they can't finish them. Don't know why. I'm sure that it's not to do with getting trades and things. I'm sure it's fine, right? But it's wild. Like, there's whole blocks of houses. They look mostly done. You can see the inside's not totally finished yet, right? But they've been sitting like that for months. And again, I don't care. Like, fine, you can sit like that, but it seems strange in a housing crisis to not finish houses, right? Apparently, the reason for the influx of people in Canada is because job and labor shortages, right? But here's a lineup for a job at McDonald's in Toronto. Table Salt says McDonald's job fair in Toronto, rent is $2,500 a month, and this is what you have to go through to hopefully make $2,400 a month full time at McDonald's. Wild, right? That's crazy town. And so the job fair is people lined up all around the block, all around the parking lot. Right? Wild. That's the job fair at McDonald's. Is there a labor shortage in Canada, you think? Here is Brian Lilly, and he's saying, I keep saying every time Toronto City Council finds some crazy idea to spend money on, they can't even get the basics right. So that's one of my main issues with our Canadian government. They keep saying they're going to solve these big problems like housing, like labor shortages, and they can't even get the basics right. They screw up housing. They screw up immigration. And it seems purposeful. It seems like there's a lot more money to be made in giving your insider friends access to like everything and control everything, and just, let the consultants hire consultants, and then you can just go glad hand people and make announcements, right? Like that's how government works, except that it doesn't, right? And so our government can't get the basics right, but they're saying, we're going to build all these houses. Let us keep flooding the country with migrants. We know how to solve all of the problems. And then when you look at the basics, did anybody pick up the garbage in one of the major cities of the country? Nope, right? Nope, sure didn't. So they can't get the basics right. And it doesn't take long to find an example of them screwing up something that they really should be getting right. It's like having a goalie, and then you're playing the game really hard, and maybe you're up 2-0, but only because the other team hasn't taken a shot, and then every shot they take goes in. You gotta switch that goalie. That's a problem, right? That's a huge leaky part of your game. And if you don't fix that, you're going to lose every game, right? And that's where we're at. So but I guess it seems like the argument is, but we have a goalie. There's no problem. We have a goalie. The position is filled. Somebody's standing there. And you say, yeah, but when the goalie's put under stress, somebody shoots at him, he fails. So there's a problem. And we're stuck at the impasse of convincing people that there's a problem, where people say, but there's a goalie. It's yeah, but he is not doing the job. And so we are in a situation where the government is saying, well, there's all these houses that we've, created with the accelerator, but there's not actually houses. There's all this food for kids at schools, but there's not actually the food, right? It's all false. It's all fake. And when you address it with them, they say, but we've got a goalie. Yeah, but you're not actually doing the thing. He's not doing the job that you say he's doing. And so you might as well not have a goalie. We might as well not spend the money on these things, right? Because it's not doing the job that you're promising. And that's Canada across the board, right? It's the basic stuff that you see that's broken is a dipstick, is an indicator that the bigger stuff is broken. And the bigger stuff is broken, super broken. And that's part of the plan for these globalists, because you can't make a communist revolution out of a society that's functioning well and prosperous. So you have to destroy that prosperous society and say, look, the problem was capitalism. We've got to attack capitalism in order to fix that, and we'll have great communism, and it's going to be great. Except the communism's crap, and the capitalism would have worked, except for these saboteurs in our government who are putting in a crap goalie, and they know it, and getting in arguments about it, misrepresenting it on purpose. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, moving on to CO2, it's the same thing. Net Zero Watch says Britain is creeping towards a green dictatorship. I wanted to show this to you because everybody hates vegans. And the British government is saying, listen, if you're not vegan, we're not interested in having you in our government building or anything like that. And this is all based on climate nonsense. This is all based on climate alarmism. This is all based on, again, taking a very small little bit, like the COVID tests, and then PCRing the crap out of it and saying, look, it's a really big problem. We have to go crazy and ban meat and ban travel and ban society. In order to save society, we have to kill it, is basically the argument they're making. And it's bullshit. It's absolute nonsense. But here is the what is this? Telegraph? I think it's the Telegraph. Yeah, the Telegraph. Okay. And it says Labour Council bans non-vegan food and drinks in meetings. Climate change, everybody. This is climate change. Critics accuse Nottingham Authority of steamrolling through policy that goes against freedom of choice. I would eat a hamburger every single day. I would bring a hamburger and maybe a side of chicken fries. I would eat as much meat, and I would run the microwave. I would just have it on in the background. Colbert did that one time, and I thought it was very funny. He said to fight against climate denial or climate change idiocy or whatever, I'm going to run this microwave empty for the whole show. And he did, and I thought it was funny as hell. He would check in periodically on the microwave running, and I thought he was funny at one point in time. He's an awful, awful human being now, but back in the day, he was funny. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to canadapoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful